Welcome back to Switzer. My next guest is a classic case of someone recognising a hole in the market, and it was before the Botox explosion. I'm joined by Michelle Kearney, who's the founder and editor-in-chief of Cosmetic Surgery and Beauty magazine. Michelle, thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Peter. It's good to see you.
When I told my producer I was doing this, someone said, gee, that's a really targeted business.
Absolutely.
And I said, yes. The way she started was absolutely targeted. So tell us how you started.
Well, this is our 15-year anniversary, so when I look back on it, I think, gosh, how did that happen? And then I'm amazed at how the market has changed over 15 years.
Yeah.
As you said, there wasn't any Botox in those days.
No.
I guess how it came about, I was actually living in Italy, and we'd made friends with a number of plastic surgeons there. And there was
by accident?
Yeah, at that stage it was by accident.
Yeah, okay.
But there was a very high-profile woman who had had a breast augmentation done, and it was plastered across the papers, you know.
As the Italians would do.
Exactly, and she said, you know, new breasts, new man, new life. And so we were at dinner with these plastic surgeons, and they'd said, oh, our life is going to be hell from now in, because people come in with unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
They think that a surgical procedure will change their life, and they said there's nowhere for people to get information. And I thought, wow, that's true. So when I came back to Australia, the bans on medical advertising had just been lifted, and it was a growth industry, and there was nowhere for people to go for information.
Now, you created this magazine.
I did.
Was it called this then?
It was called Cosmetic Surgery Magazine, and in fact we've added the beauty, because now the beauty industry is intrinsically enmeshed with cosmetic
Once upon a
surgery.
time it was actually fixing up problems. Now it's like, beautify me, baby, beautify me.
Oh, absolutely. And I think too, I mean, every single major cosmetic house now has a range of cosmeceuticals, whether it be an anti-aging range or something. So the growth of both industries is going hand in hand. I mean, the global cosmeceutical market alone last year was worth $30 billion. And by 2019, they say that it's going to be worth 40+ billion.
And of course, we blokes are getting into it as well, aren't we? Once upon a time it was the main...
manscaping.
It was the main of the Sheilas, but now blokes are doing it.
Absolutely, yeah. And why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
But was it instantly a newsagent's magazine? Like, was it sold in newsagents when you first started?
It was. I mean...
Was that a bit of a surprise that people think people would turn up to buy something like that?
Very. And in fact, you've hit the nail on the head. That was one of the problems that we had, because in those days, people were not open about having cosmetic surgery. I mean, they used to go away for a holiday and come back looking amazingly refreshed.
Right,
you know? And there was nowhere for them to get information. So we have a large subscription base. But I was a bit crucified, actually, in the media in those days, because people said, oh, you know, you're really preying on women's vulnerabilities and whatnot. But to me, it's totally post-feminist issue. I mean, you can't line people up and say, you know, you can't have it, you can't have it, oh, you're ugly, you can have it.
Yeah.
It's an individual decision.
And in a sense, it is a feminist issue, because a lot of the appointments of people was based on their presentation skills, in a sense. So if you're going to fight fire with fire in many ways.
That's true. And I mean, the thing is, what we're about is information. So in fact, we probably have changed the culture of Australia, if you think about it. I mean, from it being a very secretive, sort of under, you know, wraps thing, now anyone who's thinking of having something will buy Cosmetic Surgery and Beauty magazine, purely because 15 years we're trusted, we have good relationships with the doctors, and we don't buy into the celebrity stuff.
What was it like when you first started going around knocking on the doors of plastic surgeons and saying, hey, take out an ad in my magazine? How did they react to you?
Well, it's interesting. I couldn't have done it if my background... I'm actually a pharmacist, so it was sort of more like a peer as well. You know, I don't think that they would have gone into a mainstream women's magazine, because A, they didn't know how they'd be represented.
Yes.
But B, I was able to persuade them. You know, we had medical journalists. I said we would show them what we were writing beforehand. And I think, you know, the doctors who adapted it are the doctors who were happy to be open to scrutiny. You know, they were good practitioners, good surgeons.
And I guess the fundamental economics is pretty simple. The cost of an ad wouldn't have been all that great when you first started, because you were a small operation. But the one customer would have paid for that ad very, very easily.
The ROI is incredible. And even now, I mean, you know, I think we're probably single-handedly responsible for sort of building a lot of doctors' practices as well as their profiles. It is about ROI, but it's about doing it responsibly.
Okay, online. The world is online. How have you adapted the online?
Look, you cannot really just have, you know, a hard copy publication. Well, we have an integrated digital strategy, and that means that the magazine is available on a magazine platform globally. It's on Zinio. We have a content network with other websites that feed into that. We have an newsletter that goes out to over 10,000 people who've opted in every week. The most important thing is now people aren't just buying a magazine, they want to interact with you. So your readers are actually part of that ongoing sort of growth. So the database is very, very important.
Yeah, and I guess in the old days, people would have read articles and had questions, and a lot of people just wouldn't have wanted to post a letter and wait for you to answer it.
Absolutely.
They could get a thing
Social
done instantly.
media is huge, yeah. Social media is very good.
What's the outlook for the business then?
Well, I think we're lucky that we're a very targeted magazine. I wouldn't like to be a mainstream women's magazine. It's a growth industry. Australia is number 22 in the world for cosmetic surgery procedures.
Number 22. Now,
number 22, yeah.
Is America number one?
How did you guess? And Brazil is number 2.
Brazil is number 2?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So, I mean, look, last year the cosmetic surgery market in Australia was worth $700 million, and that is just the surgical part. You could double that if you want to include the Botox, the laser, non-surgical stuff. So, I mean, it's growing.
Now, we're number 22, obviously because of the size of our population.
No, it's
per head.
Not per capita. It's the number of procedures performed.
Okay.
Isn't that amazing?
All right. So does that mean that we're a bit reluctant to actually embrace change?
No, number 22 is great.
Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's good. And I think, look, one of the differonces with Australians...
So we are embracing change.
We are embracing.
So we can't trust what people look like. They've been tampering.
Yeah, well, I've been many... No.
Yes, good point.
Yeah, no.
All right, so how big is the organisation now? How many people have you got working for you?
I have 10 staff.
That's nice.
And it is a small business, but I think that because it's a small business, that's why we're successful. I mean, you know yourself, if you're taken out in a major magazine, that's it. You sign on the dotted line, no one cares. We have a very small pool of advertisers, so we have to make sure that they get a good result. So our core business is publishing, but we're very vertical in cosmetic surgery. So what we do in that industry is we also do websites, we also do their brochures, we write content for them. So we're a publisher, but we're very, very vertical.
Yeah, and I guess you're seen as a great connection to the communication side of their business.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so is there any other magazine left in you, or is this it?
Well, it's funny that you should say that. We're actually launching a new magazine called Sage Living.
Sage Living.
Yeah, we're sort of the demographic, Peter. It's for people old enough to know better.
Yeah.
Because
the youngsters of the world.
That's right. You know, the people with a lot of energy.
Yes.
And you know how I came up with that is when I was doing the content network, I thought, how can I deliver a new demographic? And so we have Sage Living, which is for older people who are interested in fine wines, luxury travel, you know, doing that sort of thing.
Sounds like sport brats, gone older.
And looking younger.
Yeah.
And we also have Single File, which is single people, you know, how to travel alone, what to do on a Saturday night. But single people want to look better.
Yeah.
So it's all feeding in. But the Sage Living one has really taken off. We've been really embraced. We've got an app and obviously a website. Yeah. So we'll be launching that.
And I guess we as a group, particularly baby boomers, we're very different from our parents.
Absolutely.
And there is a market there, without doubt.
Oh, totally.
And the fact when you walk down a main shopping street and you see all of the Asian nail places and things like
absolutely.
that, the Panic and Beauty rooms that was on this show, it is, and blokes are going in there. That's the part that's different.
It's mainstream now.
It's mainstream.
It's not for the rich and the famous. It's actually mainstream. And, you know, technology's made it safer, it's more affordable, and I think the mantra now is less is more. You have less procedure, you know, smaller procedures, but more often you start younger.
Michelle, thanks for joining us in the program.
Peter, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. That was Michelle Kearney. If you want to read my thoughts each morning at the close of Wall Street, check out my website, switzer.com.au. And if you have a self-made super fund, have a look at the switzersuperreport.com.au website. I'm Peter Switzer. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next week.